Here we go, testing out two maximal road long distance running shoes that I am really enjoying in 2024. It's going to be the New Balance More V5 and the Topo Atmos. Now, we're going to compare these side by side, line by line, starting right now. And I got to tell you, man, these shoes, I am loving the maximalist shoes this year. I'm just telling you, man, like there are some serious competitors out there, and I think it'll be fun at the end of the year to do a best long run shoe. Here are some contestants. So we're going to start with the laces of the More. All right, so not super duper fluffy and not super duper stretchy, but again, just wide enough that whenever they do work with the tongue of the shoe over the top of the foot, you can barely even feel them because you have a nice thick tongue here compared to the Topo. They're a little bit fluffier and they do have some stretch to them, giving them a little bit more leniency whenever it comes to the top of the foot kind of being locked down, especially with the tongue here, which is also very thick as well with the Topo Atmos. Now moving into the tongue here, yes, here it is, the Topo. It's not as thick as the New Balance More V5, but it is quite nice. Not a gusseted tongue, but it does have these little lace stays here. Here we have the tongue of the More, and taking a peek inside, it is gusseted fully on both sides. A little bit more thickness and a little bit more padding. I would say the ventilation goes to the Atmos, but the comfort and plush definitely comes in for the More here. Actually, both of them, neither one of them really had any tongue migration issues, either laterally or medially, so I was very pleased with that. Sometimes, especially me, I do have a tendency for that tongue to kind of want to curl one way or another way, and it can get kind of bunched up. No folding or bunching of any kind at all with either of these shoes. And then finally, the spacing of the eyelet chain as it relates to the laces once they're cinched down. A little bit more space here and a little bit less space on the Atmos, which, you know, sometimes I do have shoes where the uppers want to come together and kind of touch and can almost wrinkle, but I haven't had that issue at all with these, really giving the upper, the laces, and the tongue an opportunity to work in unison and not be obstructed and tripping over each other. Moving into the uppers of the shoe, so thinking about summer, it's been like super duper hot. It was a heat advisory the last couple of days, so ventilation is definitely on my mind. And taking a look at the ventilation here, you know, quite the engineered mesh as far as the Atmos goes. And I remember looking at this shoe, and look at this, there's just so much ventilation going on. It's a very thin but very comfortable material on the Atmos here versus the More, which, you know, it's not a very stifling shoe, but I would say that the ventilation definitely goes to the Atmos as far as that breathability. There's a little bit more just this thickness to the material is inside and outside for the More. Again, it's not a very uncomfortable material, but I would say if anything, it goes to the Atmos as far as that comfort goes. So, you know, we do have autumn and fall coming up, so this actually might make sense a little bit in those colder temperatures. So just taking a feel kind of that material, you know, does it have any flexibility? Is it scratchy? Is it structured? What's going on? So a little bit there soft on the More, and then getting my hand into the Atmos. Yeah, this is just like a sock. It's just a nice, it's softer than the More, and it has a little bit more stretch than the More. And then of course the natural toe box here, which is Topo's thing, you know, big wide open toes. You know, I didn't have any room with the toe cramping or toe squishing or crowding in either of these shoes, but I will say, and I said it in my review of the Atmos, that I really enjoyed how my first ray, right, my first toe all the way up to my midfoot, nice straight line, it was just allowed to happen in the Atmos. And again, I didn't have that, you know, much of a difference in, you know, restriction, but I definitely felt a lot more allowance for that to happen with the Atmos here. And now taking a feel of the actual toe box, right? So there is a little bit of material here, kind of keeping that toe box up and away from the toes, and you know, even more resistance to compression on the toe box here for the more. But you know, with the width here, there's, you know, the same thing going on, but even more so of structured material, really keeping the material way far away from the tops of the toes, the sides of the toes, and the fronts of the toes. Toe box points definitely go to the Atmos here. So good job, Topo. Okay, sliding backwards into the heel collar, yeah. So this is just a sweet, sweet heel collar, laterally, medially, and back here along the Achilles. Oh my. Yeah, so there's just so much plushy material, squishy material that just works its way, rings its way around the top of the ankle. And you know, look at this big giant Serta mattress going on there for just the top of that heel bone as it touches your Achilles, and a nice deep well as far as where that heel bone can sit. Absolutely zero heel slippage in this shoe right here, this more. Very, very, very nice. So the heel of this, you know, it's a little bit thinner, you know, in terms of where the material actually touches the midsole here at the bottom, but up at the top, it's a very nice, almost like a memory foam mattress material that was very, very comfortable. And working back here, it's not nearly as thick as the more, you know, the heel cavern is not nearly as deep, and I do remember there being just a little smidge of heel slippage with the Atmos, but it wasn't super duper noticeable. You know, the shoe overall just makes it easy to forget that you're wearing the shoe, so it was just something that I noticed early on, and then, you know, just kind of disappeared. The fit of the shoe comes from the midfoot and the heel, while again letting those toes fly nicely here. So really good job with the heel counters on both shoes here. And then this way for the Atmos and the more. Having a look inside, remember there was like this cage-like inlay that kind of worked its way up and around the foot on both sides with the Atmos. And then having a look inside, yeah, it's just so overbuilt. Like there's no inlay or anything like that, but there is some structured material kind of working its way up and around the foot with just the overall upper of the more. So it just kind of is all blended into one material versus something separate going on with the Atmos. Okay, pulling out the inserts of the two different shoes. All right, so on my left hand is the more, and then here is the Topo here, and we got an ortholite insert here, and then we have just the regular one from New Balance. And you know, both of them are very high construction, but I gotta say that the more actually feels a little bit thicker. It feels a little bit more springy versus this one here, which I've run in this a couple of times, and already I can start to kind of feel a little bit, you know, getting beat up and broken down. Now I remember talking all about this and how excited I was when I first got the shoe with the Atmos here, but it looks like the more actually has held up a little bit better as far as the durability goes. So the insert definitely going to go to the more V5 here. Now having a peek inside the shoes and just getting my hand in here, you know, it's just having to feel the construction, and there's not really too much, but I will say that the sidewalls of the more, like kind of the medial aspect where my thumb is and the lateral aspect where my finger is here, you know, you can definitely tell that there's a nice well of material that, you know, allows that insert to sink in and keeps that foot from sliding back and forth over to the Atmos. And there's not really sidewalls actually at all. You know, it just feels like a big roomy toe box, of course, you know, a nice high arch, which does work well as far as, you know, the shoe fitting on and being super comfortable, but no sidewalls. So if you do not like sidewalls, then you might want to consider the Atmos here. You get a true midsole. You know, you don't get like the false representation of the stack height with sidewalls like you would in some of these other shoes. So great job, both companies, for the construction overall and the inserts, but again, the More takes the prize for the insert down here in the shoe lab. Okay, having a look at the midsole. So this is the Fresh Foam X, and this is going to be 17% lighter than the previous iteration, that More V4, and it's going to have a little bit more spring to it. I just remember this being a very plush material, and of course 43 and 39 in the forefoot for a 4mm drop. A very nice, lively, springy, surprisingly has a little bit more energy return than I would expect for a shoe that is built for just to have steady and long distances and, you know, LSDs, right? Long, slow distances versus the zip foam of the Topo Atmos, which is gonna be 38 in the heel and 33 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. So 4 on the More and 5 on the Atmos. I remember this being a very lively, energetic, and very comfortable foam that did not really sink into the ground and just be just a bunch of nonsense as far as quicksand goes, and some of these other midsoles down here, where over time, you know, you just feel like you're digging and clawing and, like, you know, just sinking into quicksand. And oh my goodness, not the case with the zip foam. I actually really enjoyed what I would consider a stiffer midsole material, but it just opened up and breathed and had a lot more pop and spring compared to the More, actually. So I would say that the midsole points go to the Atmos down here. And of course, that landing platform, you know, since we're going to talk about just the shoe's energy return, you know, let's just see how it is. Actually, impressive. I didn't expect for this to happen. There is quite a bit more width of the landing platform with the More versus the Atmos, which is interesting because you've got this big giant toe box and it just, you know, sinks down, versus the More, which looks like it just flares out dramatically compared to the Atmos. Oh, interesting, interesting. You see, this is why I like doing these side-by-side comparisons of these shoes here, not just to say one shoe is going to be better than the other, you know, because that's not always, you know, what I'm after, but just looking at each of the different pieces, it's just, I digress. All right, let's pop these on the scale and find out how much they weigh. All right, the More V5 men's size 11 is 12.2 ounces, and the Atmos men's size 11 is 10.7. So interesting, the Atmos is a little bit lighter than the More V5 by like 2 ounces. So good job, Topo, on keeping this shoe overall a little bit lighter. So let's check the durometers of each midsole and find out how squishy they are. So my prediction is that the More is gonna be a little bit squishier. So we're gonna work with the first toe here, right underneath. That's gonna be 33. And the medial heel is gonna be 22. Around the 5th toe, right underneath, is gonna be 31. And back here, the medial heel is gonna be 27.5. So here comes the zip foam around the, let's try to keep it in order here, around the big toe, 37.5. All right, medial heel, 31.5. Lateral heel, 33.5. And then under the 5th toe. 5th toe is 33. So if I was hearing myself correctly, a little bit harder on the midsole material with the zip foam versus the Fresh Foam X. All right, moving on to the outsole. So both of them are pretty comparable as far as the outsole goes, and I did like a side-by-side comparison of the actual width of the outsole here, and actually went to the More V5, you know, and then kind of looking at the shoe again, you can see how the flare out happens quite dramatically here with the More versus the Topo Atmos. But either way, now as far as the outsole goes, I'm going to go ahead and say that this More V5 appears to be holding up a little bit more in terms of durability. Now remember, I do come down quite hard on the outside of the lateral piece of my foot called supination. You know, on both shoes, I'm doing the same thing, you know, and I usually can see a lot of breakdown happening under my 5th toes here on all of my shoes. And, you know, there's quite a bit of breakdown already starting to happen with the Atmos over this way. And of course, nothing on the medial side. But with the More, you know, you can see where things are happening, but there's not nearly that amount of breakdown that's occurring with the More. So as far as durability and hardness of the rubber, I'm going to say is going to go to the More. Now, as far as traction traction goes, both shoes feel good, and both shoes feel good around corners and everything, not being super aggressive with a shoe like this. We're really just trying to get out there and get the miles in. But overall, I do like the heel to toe transition, and as well as, you know, I'm a midfoot striker, so I try it all. But I gotta say that the roll through is gonna go to the more V5 as far as, like, you know, landing on the heel and then rolling off, and then also on the midfoot, and then kind of springing forth here. You know, a little bit more of a rocker outsole going on here, and you can kind of see how the beginning of the rocker is a little bit more mid phase here versus the more aggressive you know, almost like the forefoot rocker here with the Topo. Interesting stuff. So the price for this shoe is $159. The price for the more is $154. So a few dollars cheaper, but definitely within the same ballpark. Actually, I think that is not a bad price to pay for the amount of usage that you're going to get with these shoes. You know, you're expected to put these on and have some really nice long runs in each of these shoes, and shoes in this same category. So I think that is an extremely fair price. I don't think that they need to change that at all. As far as if I were to be able to pick just one shoe, I'm gonna have to go I'm gonna go Topo Atmos. I really enjoyed the long runs in this shoe. The thing that sold me is the wide toe box, this nice secure midfoot that does not feel sloppy at all, and this nice secure heel, even though there was a tiny bit of heel slippage in the beginning. Just this shoe, it felt so nice as far as long slow distance goes. You know, I have an issue with like really tight toes, any kind of like material touching my toes at all. It just drives me bonkers, and I didn't have any of that happening with the Topo Atmos. So the award for the long distance shoe down here between the more V5 and the Atmos is indeed the Topo. So hopefully you guys found value in this video, doing a little comparison. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to click like, feel free to subscribe to follow along, and let me know if you like this kind of material, and we can definitely do some more. There's tons of comparisons down here. In fact, I kind of want to, you know, jump into the 1080 V13 later on, if you don't mind, for a little bit of comparison there too. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining. I am a dad. I like talking about shoes and running and all that good stuff. And remember, the priorities are family and coffee and running shoes. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your summer. Peace.